Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming here today to our Express Sessions conversation about renewable energy. I'm Gavin Manu. I'm the co-publisher of the Sag Harbor Express. Thank you. Behalf of our whole team here, we welcome you to the American Hotel, which has graciously hosted this series for us. We, of course, want to take a moment to thank our sponsors who've helped us make these sessions possible. GN Ferraris, the Adam Miller Group, the Sag Harbor Variety Store, Attorney John Leonard, the Sag Harbor Chamber of Commerce, BNB Bank, the Washwick Agency, Dayton Ritz and Osborne, Attorney Tiffany Scarlato, Fisher's Home Furnishings, Harbor Books, Burke and Sullivan Attorneys at Law. Thank you all very much. We also have to thank our friends at LTV for their filming these sessions. They're making them available on their website, on our website. It's a small room here. We've generally been filling it, so it's really important to us that the word gets out, and LTV has really been invaluable for that. In a moment, we'll introduce our panel and open the floor to comments and questions. Please keep your comments brief, 1 minute or less, and please speak into the microphone, which we will bring around to the tables. The term renewable energy refers to a broad number of topics, many of which we will discuss here today. There are currently a number of important projects across the East End using solar, wind, and geothermal sources to create energy. That this event comes a few days before Earth Day is not a coincidence, as many of these issues revolve around a desire to lessen our carbon footprint. One project likely on many of our minds today is the proposal by Deepwater Wind to build a wind farm with 15 turbines off the coast of Montauk. But there are other projects and proposals, including rebates designed to incentivize homeowners to invest in renewable energy. And to help sift through all this, we have invited a diverse panel of experts. Jennifer Garvey, the Long Island Development Manager of Deepwater Wind, is with us today, as is East Hampton Town Councilwoman Sylvia Overby. Gordian Raacke joins us from Renewable Energy Long Island, as does Lynn Arthur, a volunteer on Southampton Town Green Sustainability Advisory Committee, where she chairs the Energy Subcommittee. She is also Executive Director at Peak Power Long Island, a not-for-profit that provides marketing and communication services in the areas of conservation and renewable energy solutions. Suffolk County Legislator Bridget Fleming is here to address how the county is working to further incentives for renewable energy. And Walter Hoefer, the contract manager for energy efficiency programs with PSEG Long Island, is also with us today. To start, we're just going to ask our panelists to each answer a specific question, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Jennifer, we'll start with you. Deepwater Wind is hoping to build wind turbines off the coast of Montauk that your company says could provide power to about 50,000 homes. But there have been some bumps in the road with some concern about the environmental impact the project could have on sea life and the commercial fishing industry. Can you briefly explain the scope of the project and talk about some of the challenges and hurdles that lie ahead?
And can you hear me? Everybody? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a great panel, great afternoon, so well done. And well, as you mentioned, our project is, we're proposing, it's called a project called the Southward Wind Farm. It is 15 turbines that would be located more than 30 miles off the coast of Montauk, and so they'd be so far away that they would be literally over the horizon and out of sight from any of our island beaches. This is a project that will deliver enough power for about 50,000 homes. It will offset millions of tons of CO2. And this is power that will deliver directly to the town of East Hampton by way of the substation at Cove Hollow Road, just west of the village boundary, the East Hampton village boundary. And you know, this is a project that's still really in the early phases. We call this pre-application phase. And so, you know, you asked about some of the challenges and questions that are ahead, and really the one that we're the most focused on right now is determining where we should bring our cable ashore. And so this is a conversation that's been ongoing with the community for well over a year now. And it's been a really terrific process. We got a lot of feedback, obviously heard from a lot of stakeholders, been working very closely with the town and the trustees. And so the question they're working through is, you know, when Deepwater first proposed this project, they suggested a cable over the north shore of the South Fork that would land in Nappig Bay. And they got a lot of feedback that that would not be a good idea. Could you please look at a South Shore location? And a lot of that feedback certainly came from the fishing community. And so, as a result of that input, we have been looking at the South Shore, and we've looked at a number of different locations, and we've really begun to hone in on one in particular, Beach Lane in Wainscott. With an alternative being Hither Hills out at the State Park in Montauk. But I would say that Beach Lane certainly presents a number of benefits in terms of its it's a short distance to the substation. I mentioned that we have to get back to deliver our power to the substation off of Cope Hollow Road, so it's the shortest distance, allows us to dip under 27 and avoid disrupting the main artery that is 27, which I think is important to all of the South Fork. It's the least environmentally impactful, the least disruptive to the community. We can travel through existing roads and public right-of-ways, avoid environmentally sensitive areas, and so in general, it seems to be the best fit for the community. And so we've asked the town and the trustees for some real estates in connection with that. And so that's currently the the question we're working through. Obviously, there's a lot of questions that have come up, a lot of information for us to work through. And so I think it's been a great exchange. And that's the big item that we'll be working through as we prepare to submit our applications. And I'll just mention that it's 2 years of additional permit review before before we would know if we could obtain all the permits necessary to build this project, and then another 2 years of construction. So you're looking at power that would be delivered, come online in 2022.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure there'll be more to come about this.
I'm sure.
Sylvia, as a member of the East Hampton Town Board, the Deepwater Wind project is, of course, front and center, but there are others as well. Can you tell us how the board is handling renewable energy projects in general, and then more specifically with regard to the current application from Deepwater?
Sure. So I'll start at the beginning, that we were 100% renewable in 2014. And we were certified as a climate smart community, at the first on Long Island and the 7th in the state in 2014, I think, as well. We are also, I should back up a little bit. So the 100% renewable was for electric energy, and by 2030 we want to be completely 100% with all renewable energy. So it's a heavy lift and a big task, and we've been working at it. And some of the things we've done is answered an RFP from PSEG LIPA for a solar array, and that's off of Accabonac. That will be completed, we hope, now by the end of this year. It should be in by September. There was a glitch that the original company that received that okay to move forward went bankrupt. So now we have a new company that's coming in and has signed off, and the supervisor has also signed off on that project. We've put in electric vehicle stations in the town. We would like to put in more so that it is convenient for people to come out here. And because there is always this fear that you're not going to have enough electricity if you use an electric vehicle. So we want to make sure that we have enough for the people that want to come and visit. We've also been working with South Fork Peak Savers, which is where we're trying to, and everybody can participate in this room. So this is for the Nest program, or Honeywell is also now included in it, so that you can become part of that program, get a free Nest, a thermostat, or a free Honeywell, or if you already have one, then you can get a rebate on the one that you already have. We have passed legislation that all new pools must have a variable speed pump in them. And right now with the Peak Saver program, you can get a rebate on the variable speed pump. So it's really worthwhile to try to get a contractor to put those in this summer. And also part of that is we're working with Solarized East Hampton, and that's a new program that we're working on, and it'll be a big kickoff on May the 12th. At our, if you want to come to East Hampton Village for the fair in East Hampton Village, please do, and we'll have a booth there that will help explain all the different programs that we have. Long Island Green Homes is part of that project as well, where people can get a free analysis of their home and how they can make it more efficient. I'm sure there are other projects that we've done. There was a whole group that wrote a climate action plan. The climate action plan is on our website if you want to read it, and then it was adopted in 2015 and then adopted again into our comprehensive plan. And that makes a big difference for us because it really tells the roadmap that the we need to follow when the planning board looks at buildings. So we're really happy that we were able to get those things done. And I'm trying to think if there are a lot of other projects that we keep working on, but this is something that is front and center for us, and the town is got their own solar program where they are trying to make as many buildings that will accept solar arrays on their rooftops available and get that project done as well. So we want to be the poster child, the town itself, for doing the right thing as far as renewable energy goes.
Thank you. Again, as I mentioned, this is such a broad topic, so please do get your questions ready if you want to get anything specific on this.
So I didn't answer the deep water part.
Yes.
So our role in working with deep water is to allow easements over Beach Lane and up to the substation that's at Buell Lane. And so what we need to do is look at the environmental issues that are involved in that, and we are involved in that. We've asked our Natural Resources Department to look at environmental issues, and we're working with our trustees as well so that their questions are answered. And because it's a very serious, and it's the first that's going to be here. We know renewable energy is the thing that we can't ignore, and wind energy is a big part of having to solve this puzzle. So we want to make sure that we do the right thing and that everybody is, at least their questions are answered. And environmental questions are the most important ones for us. Sure. So thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Gordian, your group, Renewable Energy Long Island, deals with projects relating to solar, wind, geothermal, and as a group, you actively lobby in support of these projects and work to educate the community on the benefits of energy efficiency. In your view, what are the most important projects or proposals that currently exist with regard to renewable energy?
Thank you. And before I get to that, I just want to say, after what we all just heard right now and what we will hear, that I'm just really proud to live in a community where all of us and our elected officials face the problems of climate change and air pollution with actual solutions, and very forcefully so. I'm really proud to be here. And that brings me to another frame I wanted to just outline, which is that the reason we're doing all these things and the reason we have to do all these things and have to do them at scale and very quickly is that we, in this community and globally, face the greatest challenge that humanity has ever faced. Climate change is a problem that will affect all of us, but will affect future generations to a much greater extent. We, as a coastal community, have a lot to lose, whether it's from sea level rise or extreme weather events, impacts on our ocean, whether it's acidification or warming of the ocean. The ocean actually absorbs 90% of the global warming. And that changes habitats, that changes everything. That changes our livelihood, our economy, fisheries, etc. We have to find solutions that are commensurate in scale to this problem. Doing little stuff or doing stuff slowly is not going to work. There's an extreme urgency now of climate change. Scientists have known about this and warned us in no uncertain terms, at least since the 1950s. We have not acted on it or not acted at scale and at the required urgency. This is the critical decade. We have about just 10 years to bend the curve of climate emissions downwards. So that's sort of like, you know, when you fly into JFK, at some point the pilot says, ladies and gentlemen, put your seatbelts, put your tray up in the upright position, and you know, we're gonna start our descent now. If you miss that point, and we're almost at the point now where we are missing it, you're not going to make a safe landing if you're going to be able to land at all. So by 2050, the latest, we have to reduce carbon emissions between 80 and 95% compared to today's level globally in all sectors, in the electricity sector, in the heating sector, in the transportation sector, in the agricultural sector, in the industrial sector, and on and on. The state of New York has recognized that goal and mandate and has established an 80% carbon reduction goal by 2050 for all sectors. The town of East Hampton has recognized that goal because that means going 100% renewable right now on all sectors, but starting with the electricity. The town of Southampton has recognized that with its 100% renewable goal. Nature has given us a deadline, and missing nature's deadline is simply not an option. The projects that are happening here on the East End are to scale. Certainly the deepwater offshore wind project, the South Fork Wind Farm, it would power 50,000 homes, plenty for this community. But Governor Cuomo in the state of New York has set a much larger goal statewide, namely to put enough wind turbines in the Atlantic Ocean to power 1.25 million homes. That's what we need to do. That's what I mean when I say we have to find solutions at scale. We need to ramp up solar dramatically. We need to ramp up energy efficiency efforts. We waste an enormous amount of energy in the generation of energy from fossil fuels and other fuels, and then on the end user side in our homes. The average home in Long Island has a 3 by 3 foot equivalent hole in the wall. Imagine what that means when you're trying to heat or cool your home. So get your home energy audit, get those cracks that make up that 3 by 3 foot surface, get those cracks sealed. We need to electrify the transportation sector. That's why the towns are doing electric vehicle, and we need to build an infrastructure. Those are extremely important projects. We have the first 2 energy storage projects on Long Island coming to East Hampton, 2 5-megawatt projects. We need to build microgrids and smart grids. We need to do a lot of things. But again, let me repeat, we got to do it on scale, commensurate with the threat we're facing, and quickly enough to not miss our safe landing. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordian. Lynn, you have been a longtime advisor to the town of Southampton on issues relating to energy and have also advised residents on the affordability of solar and how to make their homes more efficient. What are some of the ways homeowners can address sustainability in the home in an affordable way?
Well, thank you. I'd like to open by saying thank you for inviting me to be here. And I'm so happy to be following Gordian because while you're talking like on a wholesale basis, I'm going to talk closer to the homeowner decision, on a retail level. So for the past couple of years, I have been a subcontractor to the town conducting outreach, talking to thousands of homeowners on the whole East End. And I've really changed my definition of sustainability as a result of talking to all these people. And not only is sustainability stewards of the environment, but it's also how do I sustain my own existence? It's very expensive to live on Long Island. So what are the things that homeowners can do to make it lower cost of operations? But the third thing that's really come up a lot in the last year, and this is a small group, but I see this growing, and there's a lot more chatter about this one, and that's resiliency. After a severe storm, how do you keep the lights on? What can homeowners do to their homes in a cost-effective way to, keep the lights on, keep the refrigerator going, et cetera? So the good news is all the programs that the town offers and these couple of things I'm going to talk about in the few minutes that I have address all 3 areas. So the town has, the most significant thing that you can do to address all 3 of these things is no surprise. It's put solar on your roof. And I have to say right out front that you almost can't afford not to do this. If you have a south-facing roof and that roof is 15 years old or less, putting solar on your roof is so cost-effective, and it's literally there's no money out of pocket with all the options. East Hampton is going to be announcing a program. Southampton's program is being kicked off on Saturday. What this is a bulk discount for buying solar. And all you need to do is sign up for a free solar evaluation. But really quick, I'll tell you my own story. Less than 2 years ago, I put solar on my own house. It caught my energy costs, my electricity costs, was $200 a month on balance billing. I bought 35 panels. I have a 1980s home, and I use, it's an 11.5K system. And to finance that, I didn't want to write a single check. So to finance that, I applied for a New York State Smart Energy loan, and I was able to get a 3.49% 15-year fixed-rate loan for $178 a month. So for 15 years, I'm paying $178 a month, and my PSEG bill, on average, is $12. So on day one, I'm cash flow positive by $10 a month. And when you think about the rising rates of electricity, which, by the way, last year was 5%, and this year so far is 2%, over 30 years, if I didn't do this, I would be leaving $158,000 on the table. Imagine that. And after 15 years, I own the system, the loan is paid off, and my cost is just $12 a month. So, moving on. Home energy audits that Gordian mentioned, I put these by the door. When I do these presentations around town, I talk about what you can expect in a home energy audit. They go through your house, they tell you all, they give you basically a shopping list, and you've already mentioned a couple of the benefits of the program. Smart thermostats is a no-brainer. PSEG has a great rebate program. If you don't have a thermostat, they'll actually give you one and install it. But having a smart thermostat, which is Wi-Fi enabled, it knows when you're home and knows when you're not, that alone will save you 15% on your heating and cooling bills. In addition, changing your light bulbs, you know, incandescent bulbs are 9 times more expensive to operate. Pool pumps, I changed the pool pump. I got a rebate from PSEG, and also there's Southward Peak Savers, which is another PSEG program. I was able to get a $650 rebate. That pool pump, again, it's 9 times more efficient. And the last thing I want to mention about the home is, you know, it's insulation, but all of these things have rebates, and you know, again, it's on the website, but if you go to one of these presentations or if you sign up, these are by the door. You know, you don't have to live in Southampton. They all go into the same database. It's a program that's available to everyone on Long Island. Now, the last area that I want to talk about is the transportation sector, as Gordian mentioned. And it turns out that the town of Southampton tomorrow, you're all invited. We're having an Earth Day celebration at Good Ground Park in Hampton Bays, and this flyer is next to the door. We've got 10 manufacturers bringing 20 cars, and electric vehicle. These are only electric and hybrid vehicles, and there'll be exhibits at this event as well, where all of what I just described will be explained. There'll be experts there, local companies talking about what happens in a home energy audit. You know, what's the situation in your home? And there are speakers as well. But the transportation sector is critical. It's 20% or 25%, I think, Gordian, of the emissions contribution in New York State. And the rebates are incredible. Again, because of what I do, I just turned in my 2006 Lexus, and I bought an EV hybrid. It gets over 400 miles to the range. It's so inexpensive to operate. I plug it into my house because I can. I mean, I'm generating power from the roof, and it takes about 10 hours to charge. And when you think about it, you know, 10 hours at 22 cents an hour, that's pretty good. I mean, that's the equivalent of like 1 gallon of gas. So what's coming, the other thing I just want to quickly mention, there are other technologies that are coming, such as battery storage. And battery storage is, in fact, being installed by many of the new homeowners as an alternative to having a backup generator. And so instead of having a gas or diesel generator on your house, you can install battery storage. There's 2 companies that are delivering product now. Tesla obviously is one, But there's another company, Sonin, and I'm not here to, promote any particular brands, but just to point out that these solutions are integrated with solar. They're relatively cost effective, but the prices are coming down on batteries. And if you're really interested in islanding your house, any combination of what I've just described, can be configured for you. So I'll be around to discuss these later, and thank you for having me here.
Thank you. So Bridget, since joining the Suffolk County Legislature in 2015, you've displayed a commitment to promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy. Can you talk about 2 or 3 initiatives currently before you at the county level that might come to fruition in the months or years ahead?
Sure. Is this on? Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Gavin. And thank you so much for including me in this important discussion. I just would like to start by complimenting the Sag Harbor Express. We are so fortunate on the east end of Long Island to have not just one, but a number of extraordinary local hard copy newspapers that also have a great, web presence. I think I echo Gordian's pride in being a member of this community because of the forward-thinking environmental policy that we see continually enacted. And I think that our journalists are in large measure to be credited with some of the forward thinking that we see in our communities, because you keep the conversation going. This is a fantastic example of conversations where we're really hitting the issues, right on the head, and trying to work through difficult issues that you won't see progress unless you do that. So congratulations on all your incredible awards that you've just won.
Thank you.
And I'm really grateful to be part of the panel. I chair the Suffolk County Legislature's Renewable Energy Construction Task Force. And this task force was created in the wake of a number of very controversial projects, solar projects, that really highlighted the ever-increasing tension that we see in the conflict regarding the use of our natural resources. We see it in the deep water discussion clearly, and the 3 projects that led to the creation of this task force were at the former Shoreham nuclear power plant site, the Mastic Woods site. I don't know if you're familiar with the Middle Island solar project, and a project that the county had proposed at Yaphank. In a campus that the county owns, where there was a proposal to install large-scale solar. All 3 of those projects included large clearing of trees. So trees are carbon sequesters. They provide habitat for wildlife. They have a coastal resiliency function. They hold on to our precious soils. There are all kinds of reasons why our woods are critically important, not to mention that one of the reasons we all live here is to enjoy our natural resources. The ocean is a similar natural resource that we have to be extremely mindful of how we use these resources, even if we are thinking of moving forward in an environmentally sensitive way, because as Gordian pointed out, we are a coastal community. We have a particular responsibility, I feel, to reduce our carbon emissions. The costs to our community of increased extreme weather events and sea level rise is exponentially higher than it is for many, many other people. So if not us, who is going to get this right? So we have to drive renewable energy development. And at the same time, we have to recognize that driving that development is going to necessarily butt up against our preservation of our precious natural resources. So the task force is charged with identifying countywide, because this is a regional issue and we need to be regional leaders and think regionally, identifying countywide suitable low impact sites for the creation of high-scale solar renewable, but mostly in our case it's solar. So we're very fortunate to have remarkable geographic information systems professionals in our community. Like our local newspapers, we have what used to be called cartographers, now called spatial analysts, who are winning awards nationwide. That includes Ross Baldwin in Southampton and Dave Genoway in Huntington. We also have the Nature Conservancy, which has extraordinary GIS staff as well. So we've brought them all together to start to look at, to develop a map, and we're on a pretty short timeline. But the map is intended to show on a region-wide basis where there is suitable low-impact sites for renewables. We're looking at the sweet spot of about 1 to 5 megawatts of production. And what we're probably looking at are commercial rooftops, already disturbed sites that we can install ground-mounted or encourage developers to install ground-mounted, and parking lots. The county has, you know, you probably see at a lot of county parking lots, we have the carport solar installations. That was a NYSERDA grant that drove that, and so we'll continue to do that. But the hope is that we're going to layer this map so that it'll show, first of all, the surface that's available in Suffolk County. Importantly, the zoning that is in place so that the permissible uses would allow for the development of solar. And then finally, and we need PSE&G as a partner on this, the capacity for the grid. One of the things that we've got to get right, we continue to be charged to do, is the grid modernization, to the extent that the flow of energy in the grid, which is now required to come back as well as move out. It's not just a single, you know, coal-fired power plant that's supplying energy to the island. It needs to receive energy as well. Those advances have to continue to be promoted. So the plan is to have those 3 layers in the map, and within a very short period of time, we're supposed to do 90 days. I'm going to be moving for an extension, but we will be in the next few months be able to provide something that developers can look at and say, this is a good place for me to invest. And then if we continue to drive the grid modernization, we'll be able to encourage that kind of renewable energy that'll allow us to continue to bring down our carbon emissions. We do have other projects. I mentioned the carports. We also are pushing the EV charging stations nowhere near at the pace that I think we need to be doing it. Part of it is a concern with regard to capacity, but you know, it's NYSERDA. We're looking for grant opportunities, and we keep hearing NYSERDA is driving a lot of these great initiatives. So those are a couple of things that we are moving on. We as the county did adopt a climate action plan, like Sylvia mentioned, in 2015, so that we are a climate smart community. So we have an obligation to do this, and it's the hope that we will have some grant funding available as well. So I hope that answers the questions. I really compliment you on this. It's a very tough discussion that we have to have, but environmentalists are on both sides of this debate, and it's not as though we're going to be able to come up with a single solution. The only way to get it right is to keep our sleeves rolled up and to continue to have those tough conversations site by site by site in order to get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget. Prior to today's session, we actually reached out to Governor Cuomo's office to see if he could attend. I was shocked when he said that he could not, but he did recommend Walter from PSE&G, so we're happy to have him here today. Walter, what is PSEG doing to incentivize homeowners to use renewable energy technologies?
All right, again, state policy and the utility incentives have pretty much transitioned. Most of them have sunsetted. The market has been transformed to a great degree on the island and even statewide, but the island, of course, has led the state in terms of renewable technologies. So one of the things we want to focus on then too is to make sure people can maximize the value of the solar that they want to put on their roof or that they might have done already. And that's to make sure that the home that they live in is energy efficient. So that's where we really were focusing on making sure that we have rebates and also direct services that are available. I have a $75 million budget every year to implement those services and to pay those rebates to make sure you get the right equipment in your home. So I want to really focus with people on thinking in terms of not megawatts of savings, but think about negawatts. Negative. If you don't use the energy in the first place, it's a gain for the system and for the grid. And that's especially true here on the South Fork. The South Fork is really ground zero in terms of our need to get control of our growth and demand. The rest of the island, pretty much, other than people with a lot of plugins in their homes, businesses have really stepped up to the plate, being very energy efficient. But on the South Fork, because of the growth of our communities and how popular they are, and the size of a lot of the housing, I mean, there are houses out there that are 10 times the size in terms of demand that as residents anywhere else might get. So that puts a burden on all of us to try to be as energy efficient as possible. So what Lynn and others have mentioned before, we definitely do have not only not a crisis necessarily, but there's a big mission that we have to get by next summer. We have to reduce that peak load by at least 8.2 megawatts. That's the South Fork Peak Saver program that was mentioned. We are funding that. They're branding themselves so that we don't confuse things, but they are bringing our PSEG Long Island rebates and incentives to the table along with their own extra incentives. So for businesses on Main Street, they're knocking on doors saying, you want to get free lighting? Some businesses say no, by the way, but it's very busy. One of the challenges we all know, if you have a business out here, how many business owners do we have in the room here? If you understand, the seasons can be very, very short unless you're a year-round business, and so trying to get the attention of them is difficult. So that's why they're out there doing that. Pool pumps, that's another one of the focuses on the South Fork Peak Savers. We have a $350 rebate for a variable speed drive pool pump. They add $250, make it $600. It gets very, very good. And also, again, there we're working with the installers because sometimes the homeowners don't want to think about energy efficient pool pumps, but the installer does who put the right equipment in, so we're working that way. And of course, the other way is we have the Nest thermostats and the Honeywell now too. That's, I think, going to be the crux of what they're really going to be able to deliver for us. The more people we have programmable I can't talk anymore. Programmable thermostats. Try and say that 10 times fast. The better it is for everybody because we can just help cycle those central air conditioning systems down during the peak times, and it really will make a difference, we believe. So those are all the South Fork Peak Saver focus. Our focus is on general energy efficiency for our homes and businesses. We have robust rebates, as I mentioned before. I would encourage everybody here to, I wouldn't be afraid if you asked me to say, come on out and let's do an energy efficiency assessment of your home. Let's try and do it or your business. It's an opportunity here. We have to work every year to try and get people to participate. We are very successful. We're recognized around the country for our programs. But one thing I'm a South Fork person myself. I live in East Quogue. I cannot believe, because of the nature of our market down here, how difficult it is for me to get people out in the South Fork, east of the canal especially, to participate in our programs. We are a fraction in terms of levels of participation of the rest of the island. So that's a challenge I think we'd like to try and work with you folks out here on this table, in this room, to try and accomplish success, and I look forward to talking with you further. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. We now want to open up this conversation to the floor with questions or comments. As we mentioned, it's a very broad topic, so don't be shy if there's something specific you want to talk to. And to help me with that, I'm going to turn it over to our partner at the Express, Brian Boyhan.
Hi, folks. Get your questions ready. This is so. What's clear here is that this is an issue that government's not going to solve alone. And I think we've heard from everybody here today that residences and business owners all need to participate and be part of the solution. Carol, I think you had a question.
I realize we don't have someone from the village here, but my understanding is the village will not allow solar panels if it can be seen, if the roof line could be seen from other points. Is there any movement to relax that?
Lynn, you want to take a shot at that?
That's true, and you're not alone. What we need to do at the town level, we're aware of this, and we'd like to have a consistent town code, across the entire region, because we need more solar for all the reasons that Walter said on these rooftops. So what we've done as a committee is we're in the process of going to the trustee meetings in the various towns, and you're on the list to to basically lobby them to look into this. There are other, but it would have to go through the normal process: building code change, public hearing. I mean, that's a decision only the local government can make, but we're going to make an attempt to try to change their minds, if that helps.
Can I just actually follow up on that? Is there, do you see a change in technology at all that might make this more appealing? And then the other question is, are there models out there? Are there examples of historic communities that have addressed this successfully?
I can't address the second part of that, but yes, there are panels that are more aesthetically pleasing. I don't know.
Not sure if anybody's heard of it.
They're panels that actually integrate into the roof surface. They're not they're roof tiles or films that are almost indistinguishable from a conventional asphalt shingle roof. On the second part of your question, we hope to soon be able to build what we call community solar arrays, because there's a large percentage of homes that for one reason or another cannot put solar on their roof, whether it's a restriction by their government, local government body, or shading from a tree or a chimney or a gable. In the future, you should be able, and hopefully will soon be able, to buy a share in a larger solar array and get the output from your share of panels credited directly against your electric bill, as if the panels were right on top of your roof.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to say also, if I can just add
Yes.
to that, we do have folks in our renewables area who will come out and talk about community solar and how that can be accomplished in the community if they're interested.
Great, thank you. Lynn?
There's one last thing I wanted to mention, that there are basically two technologies at the highest level. There's DC PV and AC PV, and basically, the radiation from the sun hits the panel, it creates electrons, and that's DC, but in order for you to utilize it in your house, it has to be converted into AC. So there's something called an inverter that sits between the panels on your roof and your electrical box. And most of the high efficiency panels that you would purchase today have something called a microinverter that's in the panel. And what that does, the big difference between the two systems is that in the DC, or the old technology, the way I think about it, is that you have high voltage conduit running around your house that back feeds a big inverter, typically in the basement next to your electrical panel. Firefighters in particular aren't keen on that for obvious reasons. The microinverter that's in the panel, though, that converts the DC to AC, then only requires low voltage conduit, that can be routed easily through your house, around the house, in order to get to backfeed that panel. So there is a big difference between the two, and if you're looking and considering solar, both of them are on the market now. Most of the time, the DC PV is less expensive, but it's not as desirable as the AC PV. So, again, these are things, if you attend one of our seminars or come through one of these programs, we would explain this in detail.
Thank you. Lynn, another question?
Can you just identify yourself? Yes. I'm Peter Vielbeek from Shelter Island. I have a comment and a question. One comment on the solar wind. We were fortunate enough to go on the tour to Block Island this summer, and for the wind farm. And in terms of the exposure of the cable to the mainland. It was done so subtly that the only mark on Block Island that you can see that there's energy coming from somewhere else is a manhole cover about 3 feet in diameter that says electricity or power or something like that on it. That's it. No scar on the beach, no wires, nothing. So I think that the residents could probably get over the beach lane issue pretty quickly with seeing something like that. And then my other question is, are there any special program or rebate discounts for nonprofits? Our church and Sylvester Manor and other places are considering doing renewable energy projects, and we'd like to know if there's any special effort or discount program for nonprofits.
There is a NYSERDA still has for businesses, including not-for-profits, a modest rebate available. Again, it's going to be a small percentage of the rate now because the rebates keep dropping, but there is something available, and it would be a contractor who we will work with when they apply for you, and then they get the rebate directly from NYSERDA in the end. So, these folks have been vetted by NYSERDA; they're answerable to them. So we have a very good market out here. We developed the industry back when we started in 2000. There were 3 contractors. Now there's over 70 in terms of solar. So we kind of built the industry out here. I'd be happy to talk to you if you want to have some guidance on that. I'll give you my card. Make sure you see me, or I can pass the card over.
Also, in Southampton Town, as I said before, we're going to be announcing our Solarized Southampton program on Saturday. There's actually 2 mechanisms. One of them, we're actually talking to a developer, and since it's not completely baked yet, I don't want to disclose the name, but we're working with a developer to provide a different type of financing for exactly that, because we recognize that there are a lot of not-for-profits like churches who are very interested in solar, but can't get the guarantor. So stay tuned or contact us. We're working with Shelter Island with Tim Purcell over there, and we're hoping to work together on the Solarized campaign. The other thing is we are going to be announcing a low and moderate income solar program, and it's basically a lease, but we were able to negotiate a 0 escalator. So this is going to be very attractive because on day one, when a low and moderate income homeowner puts solar on their roof, the cost of their electricity immediately goes down, and then the rate will basically stay flat, for the term of the contract.
Sylvia?
Yeah, I also wanted to address, hopefully, address the beach lane access. So we did go to Block Island. A lot of us on the town board went to Block Island to see how that cable came into a very busy beach, actually, on Block Island, their main beach on Block Island. It will look the same almost on Beach Lane. The issue is, again, looking at all the environmental impacts that this cable may have, and we want to make sure that we've addressed all of those environmental impacts. The cable will be 30 feet below the beach. It's directional drilling. They're going to be around 2,000 feet out in the ocean as they start the directional drilling. And a lot of the benefits for the people on Beach Lane is that they're not only going to bury their cable, but they're going to bury everything above ground. So everything on Beach Lane to the substation is going to be buried, and I think that's a real benefit for the community, as again we talk about resiliency, and in a coastal community we know that resiliency is part of our sustainability. Those two can't be, they're connected. So but those are the things we're going to be looking at, and again, I don't know, are you going to do another trip to Block Island?
I'd love to. I know it was a great success.
It was.
Nothing quite like seeing it for yourself.
Right. So thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. You got a question here about cost benefit?
My name is Steve Williams. I'm a Sag Harbor resident. I'm a real big supporter of the concept that deep water has demonstrated and wants to duplicate here. But I did read an article that found me somewhat concerning, in that the author was comparing the projected rate change of PSE utilities versus cost of homeowners, and had two separate curves, and really in his analysis indicated that he thought that the homeowners were going to get the short end of the deal or ultimately have to pay higher rates. And since you're here, I figure it's a good opportunity for you to respond to that article, because it seems like a lot of you are nodding your head.
Give you a little background on how the Southward Wind Farm came about. In 2015, LIPA issued a technology-neutral RFP, request for proposals, in order to address the energy supply issue that we have here in the South Fork. Walter was speaking about the increasing load growth that we have here. And so that was the procurement opportunity that Deepwater responded to. We responded together with over 20 other competitors, and ultimately our project was chosen together with 2 others. A battery storage installation, which is being done by Nextera, that's underway now, and also the Peak Savers program, the demand response program that's being implemented as well. It's being run by AEG. And so the net benefit, the outcome of that solicitation, as I mentioned, is technology neutral. So any type of technology was welcome to apply, and the idea was to find the most cost-effective solution to our power supply problem here on the South Fork. And so it's great that we were successful in winning that solicitation, and we also happen to be clean power. So it's, I think, a great benefit that we've been able to outcompete other types of technologies to win this opportunity. LIPA has said that the cost of this project to the typical LIPA ratepayer is about $1.19 per month. So I am familiar with it was an ad. It was an ad that was taken out by an individual, and that information was, I'm not actually sure where the information came from, but it's certainly not from us or from anything that LIPA has put out.
Thanks, Jennifer. A question over here? Concerning oh, just identify yourself. She has an answer. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Bridget.
No, it's okay. I did want to mention that we do need to. I think we do need to put some pressure on Deepwater and LIPA for a little more transparency around the rate issue. The power purchase agreement, the PPA that was approved by the LIPA trustees, must include a term that addresses rates, and it has not been disclosed to the public. I do think there is a very real concern on the part of the public with regard to the impact on electric rates, and so I would hope that we would get a little more transparency. I don't want to put Jennifer on the spot here personally, but I think it's understood by Deepwater that there is a concern in the public. I think it's a very legitimate concern, and I certainly would like to see more transparency with regard to the rates. Thank you.
Thank you. Bridget, you look like you're...
Can I just say something about that?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I will just let you know also that the total value of our contract is available. It was approved by the New York State Comptroller, and so the total value of the project is about $1.6 billion. As you know, it's a 20-year agreement. We have a 20-year power purchase agreement with LIPA, and I'll just reiterate that the RFP materials from LIPA are available on its website, so you can see the process that LIPA went through in order to arrive at.
Check, check.
Okay. I think everybody here heard that, yeah. But just very quickly, total value is $1.6 billion. That is available. That's the total value of the contract is known. It was approved by the New York State Comptroller's office. The materials that LIPA prepared, the evaluation process that they went through is available on their website. And so, that's another source of information, so you can find out more about how this project came about and how the decision was made. Thank
Gordian?
you.
Just while we're on the subject, it's a juicy one, right? So you can go to the Open Book New York website, that's the New York State Controller's website, and look up any contract that a power authority or any other state authority enters into. The rate is not available, but the total value of contract. So what I'm suggesting is that you can look up the Deepwater Wind Project and know the exact cost that we will be paying over the 20-year term of the contract. Now you go to the website and put in Caithness for the latest power plant that was built in Yaphank. You will see there that there's a total amount of contract that covers everything but the fuel cost. When LIPA signed that contract, it signed on all of our behalf a blank check. Over 20 years, we'll be paying an amount for fuel that we don't know. With a renewable energy project, we'll be paying an amount that we know, and there's no blank check involved.
Thank you. We have a question here.
John Kerr, Shelter Island. Considering about sustainability and resilience, after Hurricane Sandy, we were all beset with multiple days of outages, and the pictures we saw of the West End of people just really almost survival situation with lack of power. I have photovoltaic on my roof. I produce lots of power. It's wonderful. But when the power goes out for the grid, I have no power also. But on a sunny day, when the power is off for everybody else, I'm still generating power, but I can't use it, and no one else can use it. So my concern is, and my point being, is couldn't we have a way that individual solar homeowners who have solar on the roof be able to provide energy for their neighbors, their community members, if nothing more than just to bring their cell phones there to be able to charge them and things like that. But since I can't do that, no one else can do it either. And it seems like there must be a change in either the way the system is wired at the inverter or how Pseg looks at the situation that we need to rectify. And I think we'd have these little pockets of people providing energy for their community around as a result of power outages.
Walter, want to try that one?
Yeah, because I hear you. I think that there is technology for the cutoff switch. I think that where that is, I'm not the electrician in the room here, so that's something that I think maybe even if we had a conversation, I'd be happy to see what the experts on that aspect say. The issue for us is safety. Safety is our number one thing. I mean, we want to serve you all with the kind of company and service you deserve, but safety is number one. And the problem with solar is if the area is determined to be out and there's a solar panel cranking, our people could be put at risk. So that's where getting around that safety obstacle is something that we really is the focus. But I hear you. I mean, back in Hurricane Sandy, I'm sorry, going way back, Gloria. Anybody here for Gloria? Maybe a few of us. My father-in-law, by the water in Blue Point, was powering everybody else with his gasoline-fired generator, like you're talking about. So it'd be nicer if we had solar that could be disconnected from the grid and then be able to power at least that home and then put some other plugs maybe from your neighbors differently, replace the fossil fuel.
Excuse me, but if I had a generator at my house that had an automatic shut-off switch as soon as the power goes off, I'm not endangering any of your crew members with that, and I'm providing power from my house. Why can't I have the same thing with solar?
That's a good question. I want to bring that question back because I'm not really up on that for you. All right, I'm going to pass my card over that way. Okay, thank you.
Lynn.
Actually, so yesterday, Southampton completed a bid response, and I think East Hampton will follow suit very soon. The company that we selected is Green Logic. They're a local company. We've worked with them for years, actually. They won the last two bids. Green Logic recently, because the town has been working, the committee's been working with Green Logic on battery technology, making sure that they were on top of what's happening like in California and other places that are kind of leading the way. And what I'm happy to tell you for your own home, if you were to invest in battery technology, and obviously it has to be configured properly, but the battery technology is completely integrated. And you can, for example, and I'm familiar with the Sonnen because it's more readily available than the Tesla. So the Sonnen technology can be configured so that it automatically detects when the grid is down, and it will shift the load, onto the battery, exactly the way in which you're describing it. It also, for peak, for summer peak, when we have these issues in the summer, from 4 to 7 p.m. typically on the weekends, it can also be configured to automatically shift the load from your house onto the battery. Time of use rates are coming. I'm answering a little bit more than you were asking for, but I want to just share with you, there's many, many applications that are advantageous. Batteries are the next big technology, and the prices need to come down a little bit, but they solve many problems for us here on the South Fork. And we are submitting a pilot proposal to NYSERDA to test some of these things out in a residential setting. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Lynn. Somebody on this side of the room. We'll start with Eric, and then we'll go to Gigi.
Thanks. I have a pretty simple question. About 7 or 8 years ago, when you would talk about renewable energy, you would hear a lot about geothermal right up there with solar. And at this meeting, I haven't heard geothermal mentioned once. Is that no longer considered a viable technology, or is it no longer considered useful in terms of energy resilience?
Great question. And the geothermal, or more precisely here, geothermal heat pump technology is a very valid technology. In fact, we need geothermal heat pumps and air-to-air heat pumps to electrify or decarbonize the heating sector. The industry, when you looked a few years ago, was in its infancy stage and is now maturing. So now is a good time to actually get a proposal from, or several proposals from several contractors that do that kind of work if your lot is suitable for it.
If you read some of the local papers out here, Dan's papers and some others, you will see a lot of advertising that I'm paying for about geothermal. So I guess you didn't see the ads, but we will pay up to $2,000 per ton installed. One of the things we did also in terms of claiming savings, the way they were analyzing that, they were penalizing the effectiveness in the program because of the loss of revenue in the wintertime as far as carbon and other things. We decided we negated that. So now the cost effectiveness is a lot better. We're actually, our company and then all the ratepayers are gaining from electric heat being generated by geothermal during the winter. That's a plus as far as we're concerned. But again, also during the summer, it's very cost effective. It really, especially on the peak load side of the thing, it can be a great solution. So I encourage you. We do have incentives. We have a new platform that's going to be coming out very shortly, which will make it so whether you're commercial or residential, you can get the same arrival page.
So I actually already do have geothermal, so it was kind of a trick question. But and it was put in about 8 years ago, and so it's probably not as current as some new systems. And one of the things that I've noticed is that it's wonderful in the summertime, and in the wintertime, it really raises my electric bill a lot. So I'm wondering if PSEG is considering offering some sort of discount rates for people with geothermal heating because of the the overall value of the
That's
product.
that's a good question. I'm going to have to take back as well. So thank you for asking that, because we are, as was mentioned before, we are looking at having more rate selection. People kind of, if you can, even more so than we have with our time of use rates now, which is not really user friendly. It's a legacy program. Try to make it so you can program yourself. If you have an electric vehicle, maybe you'll have one's rate. Same thing with geothermal. Maybe we should do something there. Or if you can do all of your laundry overnight, there's all kinds of different options that we're going to try to give to people. It's going to take us some time to develop it, but what you're talking about, just so we can get everything off of that, that peak that we met, and we haven't really had beyond that 5,800 megawatts we've hit in the last 10 years or so. So we're fortunate that we haven't gone beyond that. So we need to add more resources. You've heard our company say we have enough to go through 2030, 35 maybe. But still, the more we can do to encourage people to even things out, that's better for everybody. And then overall, reduce your energy usage is another great thing. And that's better for the planet, and better for carbon reduction, and better for everybody's bottom line. So thank you for asking about geothermal. It's one of my favorites.
I am a resident of Sag Harbor, Gigi Morris. I also have geothermal, and I got it because Sag Harbor would not let me put solar panels on my roof. So back to the very first question, and I think it's really unfortunate that none of the trustees are here today. I thought this discussion would be much more about what we in Sag Harbor could do and about us being allowed to put solar panels, that sort of thing. One additional benefit of geo is that you don't have a huge, noisy AC unit or whatever outside your house. I have a question, but I want to make one more local comment just because that's my interest. For anybody who's interested in maybe having a meeting with the trustees about the village, talking about solar panels and being a little more green, at one point I briefly headed a group called 725 Green, and we talked a lot, especially with Ted and other owners. These stores on Main Street have flat roofs. You wouldn't see the solar panels. They're in the sun all day. It makes a lot of sense for the downtown of Sag Harbor to consider a partnership of solar, and I don't really know how that would happen. It sort of died several years ago, but something for local residents to think about. My question, and I apologize for my ignorance, with the wind approach, so obviously our population quadruples or whatever in the summer. How does a system like that make sure that it's really providing for this giant summer population, and then we have this big dip and we don't have a constant demand? Does that make sense?
Sure. So, I mean, the Southward wind farm is not intended to replace all of the existing power generation. It's meant to complement the existing systems that we have. So it was a source of new power supply, recognizing that we have this peak demand issue. That was sort of the genesis, as I mentioned, the genesis of the project. So it is intended to complement existing sources. So obviously in the summertime, it'll be running alongside, power that comes from the west. But for a good portion of the year, just because our demand drops off so much in the off season, a great portion of the South Fork will be powered by wind alone, based on the amount of power that we can deliver.
What season is the windiest? Like, what's the best?
Sure. The good news is offshore wind is quite, it's different than onshore wind. It's much stronger, it's much steadier, and actually I have this great map, which I know we're not doing visuals today, but that shows like the wind speed rates off the coast, and you can see that we're really into the red, which is the really strong wind type of thing. And so it's a world-class, energy resource right off our coast. So we have that benefit of really excellent wind. It is definitely windier in the winter season, but our turbines require only 6 mile/hour wind in order to turn. So.
Just a quick add to that. It's important to note that our peak, strangely enough, is in the summer on Friday evenings and Saturday evenings. Sunday evenings are fine for some reason. I think you can all guess why that is. So between 4 and 8 p.m. on those weekends, we have our peak. Unfortunately, solar is not able to contribute that. Solar peaks at 12 noon, and at 4 o'clock is pretty much down at the bottom of the curve, and at 8 o'clock it's totally gone. I've got solar on my property. But that's where wind comes in, and that's where battery storage comes in, and that's where demand response programs like the thermostats come in. So solar can help us in that case. Solar is a great resource, not for meeting peak demand, but fortunately we have wind, battery storage, and other technologies.
Yeah. Just a question. Do most home solar systems have storage capacity? No. I see.
No, not yet. There were some systems installed that were able to shut itself off the grid and keep the power going with solar and battery storage. Very few, and it's really a cost issue. I looked into it myself back in 2002 when I had solar installed. It was a lot of extra money, and I said, I'll use candles or something.
Right. And Jennifer, assuming that there's a surplus possibly in the off-season, January, February, what happens to the surplus energy generated by the wind farm?
Sure. I mean, it's on the grid and it travels wherever it's needed. So it will start to head west if it's no longer
Who benefits from that financially?
Well, in general, the cost of the wind farm will be paid by the entire LIPA rate base, just like all of our power generation that LIPA has power purchase agreements with. We pay for rates, we pay for the Caithness system, for the Neptune cable, and so on. So the cost of this is borne by the entire LIPA rate base, not just the town of East Hampton or the towns of East Hampton and Southampton together, even though it is the Southwark wind farm. So it'll be blended in. The cost is blended in with the rest of our rates.
Okay, thank you. Bridget, you want to say something?
I just want to emphasize a really important point around the peak demand, which is, all of Long Island is seeing its electric demand going down. It's trending down across Long Island, except on the East End, except on the South Fork. And because in order to ensure that the supply of electricity is safe and reliable, the utility has to design the system in order to meet that peak demand. So even though it's an infrequent thing, it's happening, only during the summer, and as Gordian said, only on those 2 evenings, the entire system is designed in order to meet that demand. So if we can reduce that demand, which seems like potentially something that can be done, it means lower costs and lower building of infrastructure for everyone on Long Island. So I hope I'm clear about that, but the impact of that very brief peak demand is extraordinary with regard to rates and with regard to the need to generate power generally.
But then I wouldn't be able to heat my 50,000 gallon hot tub that I want to use at midnight.
We
Bob?
need to educate.
Bob Weinstein, I live in Sag Harbor. I just have a sort of general question about all the green technologies that we hear about. Oh, was that not working before? Oh, do I need to swallow it? We hear about the net benefits of solar panels and of wind turbines, but I can't help but be curious about the impact that these technologies and the manufacture of these technologies have on the environment, and if there's ever been an analysis done of the net negative impact versus the net positive impact. How far ahead I hope we're still ahead, but how far ahead are we, if anybody has an answer to that?
That's a great question. So I've got two answers for you. One is that everything we build has an impact, and the question is always what has the lesser impact, right? So take the case of solar panels. When I had my panels installed, somebody just asked me just that question and said, so Gordian, you're saying you're going to avoid all these carbon emissions and be green, but how much carbon was emitted when they made the panels, silicone, and the aluminum frames, and the electric wire that goes into it, et cetera? And I said, I don't know. And I got in touch with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in Golden, Colorado, and sure enough, they had a study that looked at that. And on average, if I remember this correctly, it takes somewhere between 7 and 9 months for your solar panels to generate carbon-free electricity to offset the emissions that were used during the manufacturing process.
And an average solar panel
lasts, it usually has a warranty for 20 or 25 years. It lasts much longer than that.
Yeah. One of the things that I think Lynn brought up earlier was the amortization of her solar array, that by the end of 15 years, you would have netted out $158,000, 130, over 30 years. So what's the life expectancy of your particular solar array?
Good question. It's 35 to 40 years.
Maintenance cost on that?
0.
Wow, impressive.
Just to add to the cost, typically a solar array around here pays for itself somewhere between 7 and 9 years. So you're making your money back within that time frame, and then you have free electricity for life, which is really nice to know.
And that used to be, by the way, about 40-year or 50-year payback. So the rebates we used to give out at LIPA, say 17 years ago, was about $9 a watt on a $13.50 install cost. Now you're down to about $3 a watt, Gordian, I guess, and Lynn, right? So again, it's amazing how the cost has come down. So like you said, the payback period is also coming down with that.
And the prices I just saw on the bid that we awarded, the town awarded yesterday, is lower than they were 2 years ago.
Hi, I'm Mark Abramson. I actually work for East Hampton Town for Natural Resources Department, and I also live in Southampton. And I actually have a solar array on my house. My question is for PSE&G. So I spec'd out the solar array to make my net gain loss 0 because the solar company I use said that they're really not going to pay you back for any more than pretty much what you use. So I'm just wondering, because it's a large discrepancy, because I then installed high efficiency lighting and everything else to try and minimize my electricity afterwards, and I have a large surplus at the end of the year, but the amount that I get back is very minimal.
That's the wholesale rate versus the retail rate, which is why we tell people not to become a solar power generators. You should be a solar power user. Again, I'm not speaking for the sales approach of some of these companies. And I've had friends do install. I don't install because I have big trees, so I'm not going near that. But the thing is purchasing the thing outright if you have the resources somehow, or get a loan. As Lynn mentioned before, that's the best thing. Some of these PPAs, power purchase agreements, and leases, there's really, I mean, it can be iffy. I had a friend of mine, they pitched him a lease, and it ended up, he wanted to pay cash up front anyway. The delta was $4,000. So that was the money they were making on him with that lease over that period of time. So I guess you might have been, I don't know, I'm not going to say you were oversold. They're supposed to model this stuff. And if they went through, did you get an incentive from NYSERDA? All right, yeah.
It was a great price, and it's obviously going to pay itself back, but
right.
It's such a small system that I didn't think it would be, I mean, it's only 4.5 watts, small house, but this year I've had 850 kilowatt hours positive from the full year.
Yeah, so you're very efficient, which is great. You know, you're like me. My house isn't too small either, but my bill is $150 a month. So, and I keep telling people, say $300, $200. I said, what are you doing? Everything's plugged in. So, it's good to be that way. And so, thank you very much for sending more solar back to us. We're all sharing it.
Not a great a response, but you know, if you bought an electric car.
I know, it's going to happen. I'm going to change my gas dryer to electric dryer. So I'll use it.
Thank you. Jesse?
Jesse Matsuoka, local business owner and homeowner as well. I just want to touch on the new technologies that are coming around. I know that we live in a very old town, and the public main within these towns are very, very old, and the infrastructure is old. I've been seeing things about installing public main generators. Is that something that Long Island is currently doing, or is there any talk about that at the moment, where they're putting in turbines within the public water mains? So the pull on the town is actually the force that actually creates the energy anyway. So that's one. Two is that I know we're surrounded by water, so there's a lot of tide power turbines. I know the difference in tide around here is crazy, and is anybody taking advantage of that?
Again, I back when I was first joined LIPA and was really focused on the building out the power infrastructure. We had a lot of old plants that had to be replaced, and we had to add more at the time. So, but they did ask me to also look into the tidal power, and it's interesting that part of the challenge we have here as an island is our coastline is our gold. You know, that's our oil, if you want to call it that, the value. And to take up any space with the infrastructure you need to take advantage of the tidal power was not deemed to be practical. One of the, besides having the big infrastructure where it would draw in and draw out as the tide changed, that's one way of looking at it. Again, there it would be difficult if you had something out where Jennifer's got her wind turbines maybe, and they had pistons actually over an area. But again, that would have an infrastructure and an impact. The fishermen already are concerned about just Jennifer's wind turbines. So again, there for our more congested area in the island and the offshore area, probably not as practical. I might point out too an interesting one. There was one up in Scotland on the North Shore, the North Sea there, and it was built, heavy concrete and all this other stuff. The force of the wave and the tides cracked the concrete. So the power of the tides is there. How do you harness it is part of a challenge. And I don't know if Gordian in his travels around the world, if he's seen anything that might be practical.
Yeah, there is some emerging technology and some proven technology on this. There was an underwater pilot project, underwater turbine pilot project installed by the company called Verdant Power in the East River with NYSERDA, with state backing. They took it out, they had some issues, they're trying to fix it. It'll probably be another 5 or 10 years or so until we have these emerging technologies fully commercially available, ready to go, and cost effective. With offshore wind and onshore wind and solar, it was the same thing. These things take a decade or so to be ready. Right now, of course, we got to focus on the stuff that's ready to go. I just wanted to mention that the town of East Hampton is launching its Solarized project under the Energize East Hampton umbrella, which includes the Peak Savers program and a free home energy audit program, and will probably include more things as we go forward. If you happen to live in the East Hampton, town of East Hampton side of Sag Harbor or anywhere in town, go to energizeeh.org. You can submit a question by email. If you have questions that we can't answer today, we'd be happy to answer those questions.
Thank you. Just while we're paused here, Sylvia and maybe Bridget, do you see a day where we may actually codify solar power or requiring in building codes that they maybe position houses south-facing or be solar or renewable energy set?
So good question. So the town of East Hampton, actually in the town of Southampton, both have increased what they call their HERS rating, which is the home energy rate that you have to have as in building. It's now part of the New York State Building Code. So it really defines how energy efficient your house as a new build or a renovation over a certain percentage has to be. And we have even increased that in our own code so that, and it basically hits larger houses with a bigger increase in how they have to be efficient. One builder said to me, well, any big home over 10,000 square feet's got to have solar on it. That was the point. So we hope that continues. So yes, we are looking at making sure that some of these things are built into our code so that these things happen organically, more or less, on their own.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to second that, absolutely. The other thing that they're also putting in is geothermal. But if they have the larger homes, to get the score, they must have probably a combination of solar and geothermal.
Yeah. To get the score is important to it really helps builders to know ahead of time what they need to do and helps homeowners. And, we're looking at second homeowners who possibly have the money to be able to do this. And so this is a good way to make sure that these larger homes that we're seeing built that would be energy consumers, as Walter was talking about earlier, really pay their fair share in a sense of making sure that they don't take too much off of the grid.
Thank you. Bridget?
I'd just like to say we were first, Sylvia.
And you were. Southampton, we piggybacked on Southampton. We really, and I will say, we actually had your building inspector come and talk to the town of East Hampton. So this is a good project where we work together. It's the South Fork. It's not just East Hampton and Southampton.
It is the South. I used to be a member of the Southampton Town Board. That's why I mentioned it. And I don't know that the building inspector in Southampton actually loves the HERS ratings. They're the as Lynn pointed out, they're the most stringent in the country. But I would just like to, in response to your question, I think it's important to, it's so great to have this conversation. I think it's important to recognize that because we need to continue to drive renewable energy in a way that's low impact on our environmental resources, we need to recognize that we've got to continue to push for grid modernization, for market modernization and encouragement, and for regulatory modernization. And I think that we are doing that, but the questions, a number of the questions have highlighted the fact that the grid has to come up to a more modern standard where we're no longer operating from, a few coal-fired power plants that are just feeding energy out into the community. That energy needs to move in two directions, and there's a lot of technology that's working on that, but the grid needs to get that, and the utility needs to keep coming along with that. Markets, private economic markets want certainty. And so the idea of the solar codes is an important one to look at as a region, because folks who are putting capital investments into their businesses don't want to have to wonder or have to vary what they're doing from jurisdiction to jurisdiction on the island. So actually the mapping project that the Renewable Energy Task Force is undertaking is going to include a comprehensive overview of the solar energy codes in each of the locations, because the point of it is to drive private investment. And then those sort of regulatory pieces can benefit from what, because every town has some sort of solar code at this point, but we need to make it more consistent region-wide.
Lynn.
I also want to share that, because I'm on this committee, the Land Management Department in the town of Southampton has a project where they're writing code for subdivisions. So there would be, like a subdivision, large parcel, a developer would come and say, I want to cut this up into, 10 homes. Well, they're going to require, or this is what's being discussed, because obviously they'll have to go through the public hearing process, but they would require that one of those parcels becomes a utility parcel. And there could be a large solar array on the utility parcel that would serve the needs of multiple homes. That parcel would also be used for stormwater runoff and septic collection. I mean, there's a lot of talk about how that could, but that would be a legislation policy that would dramatically decrease the increased density and its impact on the grid and on all of us as ratepayers who would have to bear the burden of the cost of bringing that additional infrastructure out to meet the needs of that continued density growth.
Thank you. Questions? I just want to, yes, I'm sorry. Sarah?
Sarah Gordon from Shelter Island. And Gordian, you mentioned a couple of 5-megawatt storage projects, and listening to the fellow who's producing solar that he's gifting to the utility company, and to the Shelter Islander who wants to be able to charge his neighbor's cell phones, and Bridget's comments about regulatory evolution. Maybe you can tell us just a little bit about how that storage project is structured, and I want to also thank you for the reality check about the 21st century circumstances that we're facing, and say that larger distributed collective intelligent energy systems, that such as one that could be situated at Sylvester Manor or on municipal properties, are going to be critical. We will have a disabling storm at some point, and we've seen what that's done to other territories. And I think I just want to encourage us to figure out a way through whatever regulatory impasses there are and move quickly so that we can be collecting, storing, and when needed, distributing energy within our communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Jordy?
Did you want to know something about the 2 5-megawatt? Yeah, those are 2 large-scale facilities, one to be located at the East Hampton Buell Lane substation, Cove Hollow Road, and the other one out in Montauk. They will be able to store 5 megawatts of capacity and deliver that consistently over 8 hours in each case. So they are designed to meet peak demand in the summer during either the 4 hours. In that case, it would be if they delivered everything during the 4-hour window when we experience peak demand, they could push 10 megawatts into the grid, which is significant. If they stretch it over 8 hours, that's what they're rated for, they could deliver 5 megawatts each. That is a really exciting project. We've not, like I said, we've not had anything like that on Long Island, and very few places actually in the state, I believe. The costs are still relatively high. So this is just the beginning of this technology here on Long Island. I think we're going to see a lot more, and it is very important, not only in conjunction with conventional energy sources, but also, of course, enabling renewable energy resources, which are very reliable and predictable, but are variable. So the wind blows, and then it blows less, and then it, the sunshine, the same thing, right? So it is an integral component of our 21st century electric system and grid.
Thank you, Gordian. Do we have any last questions? We do.
Sure. My name is Carrie, and my question is just a bit off topic from everything we've been talking about, because obviously the need for renewable energy is clear, and I'm a huge supporter of it. I just wonder what the impact is of things like the wind farm and everything to our water quality and marine ecosystems, if any. I'm sure there must be some, but I would just like to understand a little bit more about that.
Okay. Well, I'll speak for the wind at least, and you know, the great news is that we have a pilot project right next door. I mean, obviously, first, offshore wind is not a new technology. It's a very mature technology. Actually, there's over 4,000 turbines spinning in Europe, so we have that to learn from. And then, of course, we have the Block Island Wind Farm, which is the pilot project that Deepwater Wind built, and it's the very first offshore wind project in the nation. So to use Block Island as the example, since it's the closest to us, and I appreciate that habitats are different in different areas, the news coming out of Block Island is really good. You know, I mean, that was essentially a research project. You know, we did a lot of collaborative science with various institutions, University of Rhode Island, UMass. We worked together with the fishermen to design the methodology behind that science, and the news is that fishing is just as abundant as it was before the wind farm was installed, and you know, they've been out there. I mean, we've conducted baseline studies. We did studies during constructions. There's studies after the fact, and so again, really localized impacts during construction, as you might expect. Yes, pile driving is noisy, but it's only for a limited time, and the area recovers very nicely. I would also offer that obviously things like marine mammals are a huge concern for people, making sure that they're well protected during an installation like that. Our company worked together with some of the leading wildlife protectors, like the National Wildlife Federation, and they actually came up with an agreement, a protocol that was implemented during construction to make sure that there was a kind of a no-go zone for any marine mammals. There were observers, trained observers on board at all times. There were, they listened for them acoustically. There was just a long list of ways to make sure that if any, as marine life came into the area, the entire project shut down. So construction did not happen while any of these creatures were known to be in the area. And so the outcome was excellent. You know, there was no known impacts, and like I said, the science coming out, that's really been very encouraging. That installation is proving that nature and offshore wind are coexisting nicely.
Thanks. Gordian?
Water quality? No. We're not really putting anything into the water, you know, so other than some localized disturbance from, you know, sediment during construction, for example, and no particular impacts on water quality, no.
Gordian?
And again, just to reiterate, we want to be very, very careful about building this new 21st century energy infrastructure in a way that minimizes impacts on the environment. Everything we build, everything we do has impacts on the environment, but we want to minimize it, and we want to put it on a scale and weigh it against what would be happening if we didn't do that. And keep in mind, it's hard to think of it when we plug something into a white outlet. We are removing entire mountaintops in Appalachia for coal to burn in our power plants, even though Long Island doesn't actually use coal power plants, fortunately, but we still have some in New York State. We are destroying entire ecosystems in Canada to get natural gas. We're fracking. We're doing a lot of terrible things, and we never think about it when we put that toast in the toaster. That's got to stop. And I would argue that the things we're looking to do going forward are far less, by orders of magnitude, far less of an impact on our environment than what we're doing now.
Thank you. Bridget?
Yeah, I would agree with Gordian that we do need to, that the renewable energy solutions that are being proposed, including the wind farm, have far less impact than a lot of what we've done so far. And as a coastal community, we have to push forward with them. I do think we need to keep our eyes open and keep the feet to the fire of anyone who is proposing such a large development, including solar, and with regard to the impact on our natural resources. It's an excellent question. We don't have any members of the fishing community here today, but I can, and I'm not either, but I can speak to some of the feedback that I've heard from the fishing community with concerns, for instance, the vibration and the sound when they're constructing these turbines is going to be enormous, and that is going to have some disruptive impact on the marine ecosystem. There's just no question about it. And we don't know how long it will take for that ecosystem to restore itself, or if it will. It's an ecosystem, so it'll change, it'll adjust, it'll survive. But how it does and what it's going to look like isn't something that we know. And we have to keep asking those questions. And I think Deepwater needs to answer those questions, and I think they'll continue to do that. Another question, of course, with regard to the fishing community is with regard to gear. Once the turbines are constructed, any place where there's a cable running less than 6 feet below the ocean floor, they need to put a cement, what do they call it? Mattress. Thank you. Doesn't sound very comfortable, but on the floor there. And there are concerns with trawlers, for instance, guys and women who are fishing by pulling nets through the water, that those can interfere with their gear. And it's a very important, it's in the area of a very, very important fishing area where it's teeming with fish, and the commercial fishermen do use it. So I agree that we need to push these renewable projects forward. I also think that we are obligated to ask the tough questions, and I appreciate your question there, because it is a good one, and we have to just keep our eyes on it.
Thank you, Bridget. We're going to have to wrap it up here now. I want to thank you. Yes? Oh, Jennifer, of course.
Appreciate your comment. I do, and I certainly don't mean to understate the impacts by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, there are impacts during construction. The great news is, from all the science that we've done, looking at Europe and looking at what's happened on Block Island, the area does recover very nicely, and so and that's the data that we've been able to to share with folks. I would say too that I absolutely agree. Fishermen do not like offshore wind. I don't think you'll ever hear them say that they like it. But there are ways that we can work together. Absolutely, fishing and offshore wind can coexist. And I think the most important way to do that is during the siting process. The lease area that we own went through an extensive stakeholder engagement process. It was led by a number of states together with BOEM, and it really did engage the fishing community, and they were able to take out the areas that were most important to the fishing community, because the best way to avoid conflict with fishing, obviously, is to not be there in the first place, right? And so that was really the intention of that process. I can tell you that Deepwater as a company has declined to bid on other lease opportunities where they felt that there was too much conflict with fishing. So that is something we take very seriously, and we're very committed to working with the fishermen to understand their concerns. Some of the good news about our release area too is that because of some of the bottom type that exists there, it's not an area that's really trawled by fishermen, and so that's kind of one major fishing gear and one of the more prominent types of fishing gear that you don't really find in that area. And so that's one of the reasons why that particular site is well suited for offshore wind. But I absolutely agree. We have to. I do expect you to hold our feet to the fire. We have a lengthy 2-year permitting process to go through. It will require review at the federal level. It's a process called the National Environmental Policy Act that's led by BOEM. More acronyms, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management. We also have to go through extensive oversights through the Article 7 process, which is led by the Public Service Commission here in New York State. So I definitely appreciate the hard questions. We've been working with the town for a whole year now, and the more questions that we get, the better we can scrutinize ourselves as well and make sure that we deliver a really fitting project. And just a note about the cable as well. It is true our cable will be buried. It will be, the target burial depth is 4 to 6 feet beneath the seafloor. We are able to microsite along the route to make sure that we're doing core testing, for example, right now, so that we can make sure that we're finding areas where we will be able to achieve burial depth. In the limited instances where we can't, we would have a concrete mattress. That's actually a recommendation that's come out of Europe. Sometimes they use rock piles, and some of the fishermen have said that a concrete mattress would be better for them for their trawling purposes. But in either instance, the cable will be well marked. The areas with the mattress cover will be well marked. And so marking things is helpful, I think, when you're fishing. There's a lot of stuff on the sea bottom that you don't know about until you hang up on it. And so at least we can promise that whatever we put in the ocean will be, everyone will know about. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you. Sylvia?
Just quickly, fishing has its own impact on the ocean, and so we need to understand that we're looking for a place and a way to coexist so that we have renewable energy and fishing can still be maintained. But fishing itself does something to the ocean. The other thing, just a small anecdote, that we know that things that are happening on land are also impacting the ocean. And my daughter-in-law's pregnant, yay. And but, you always look at, or she does, she's looking at what she can consume and what she shouldn't consume. And of course, mercury is one of those things that seem to be in larger fish and game fish. So one of the things that wasn't on when I was pregnant on the list was cod, and now cod is on the list. That means we are poisoning our fish by having fossil fuels continue to be burned on land. So we are poisoning the water ourselves, and we need to stop doing that.
Thank you, Sylvia. I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for coming. Express Sessions is going on a brief hiatus until October. We will be here, though, the next few months with subjects that are particularly near and dear to my heart, which is the wine industry of Eastern Long Island, and we'll be sponsoring a monthly event here, tasting some local wines and hearing from winemakers. We do want to keep this conversation going, though, about renewable energy. There'll be full coverage of today's session in the April 26th edition of the Sag Harbor Express. Also, thanks to our good friends at LTV, the video will be available both through LTV and on our website, sagharborexpress.com. And I want to thank our sponsors. For those of you who would like to participate ex post facto, you can send letters to the Sag Harbor Express, comments to letters@sagharborexpress.com. Once again, thanks to all of you. We'll be back here with more issue-based Express sessions on October 19th, so get your tickets early. Thanks very much.